Hi, in this module we are going to focus on creating mobile learning activities. Dreamweaver with version CS6 on, they've created an option to create a fluid grid website. And the idea of a website based on a fluid grid layout is that it adjusts based on the user's browser. And so in this case you can see what it would look like if this was on a laptop, on a tablet, and then on a smartphone. And so this is a great way to build websites for activities where students will actually be out in the field and you're not sure what device they might have. And so you want to create something that makes sense given that. And so it could be an activity tied to a museum. It could be tied to looking out at nature, whether it's birds, you name it. So have some fun with it. Here's an example of Dr. Hung's, and you can see it's a 3-column layout on my laptop. And you can see what it would look like in a tablet and then in a smartphone. And so we're going to jump right into Dreamweaver, and this is using Dreamweaver Creative Cloud. There are a few differences than the previous version in CS6, but for the most part it is the same. So I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to make sure you'll see it defaults on blank page. I'm going to select Fluid Grid Layout. And I could adjust some of these if I wanted to. For now I'm just going to use the defaults. I'm going to save this in my websites. I have an edtech2 folder and my 502, and so I'm going to call this main. So this is my main CSS, and I'm going to save it in my styles folder. And then you'll notice that when I do that, it brings in a couple dependent files. I have a boilerplate CSS. This basically makes this work well across multiple browsers. I have my main that I just created, CSS, and then there's this little JavaScript file. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save this HTML as mlearning. I'm going to save it in my 502 folder. And it's basically talking about the dependent files that go with it, and that works for me. And then I'm going to go to my file menu, and I'm going to take that boilerplate CSS, and I'm going to drag that down in my styles folder, just so everything is nice and neat. And it's going to prompt me, do I want to update it? I do. And this is why I change this in this file panel rather than outside of Dreamweaver, because it will update the code for me. And if I look down here, I'm going to take this JavaScript file, and I have a folder I've created called scripts. I'm going to hit update, and so now I have everything where I want it. Okay. So I'm going to go back to insert, and over here I'm going to click on this, and I'm just going to get rid of some of this text here. And with my mouse over here, I'm going to click on div. Now you'll notice that there's this option down here in Dreamweaver CC to insert as fluid grid element. So I'm going to click on ID, and I'm going to call this header, lowercase. And I'm just going to get rid of some of this text. I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure insert as fluid element is selected. And then I'm going to do footer. Click on this top one, and I'm going to hit the trash can, so that's gone. Let's try that again. Let's make sure I'm on. Okay, so you can see that there's already an error. And so if I go down here, I can see what's happened is, so I have my div1 here, and that's the one I want to delete. But you can see that it basically put these other headers in it. So I'm going to undo. Right? And so you have this option here. And what you could do, and let's just do that from the start. Let's first make sure that we have everything here that looks right. It does. I'm just going to delete this one here, and then I'm going to repeat what I just did. Make sure my cursor's outside of that. I'm going to actually add a call out. And a footer. And for me, I always like to just get rid of some of this text. It's just too much. It's really just there's a placeholder. And sometimes I'll often just go in right away and start adding a background color just so I can start seeing the edges of everything. It kind of helps me conceptualize things. I often will go down here and clean up my source code because I can basically see that there's this grid container, right? And a closing divs down here. And then in between I have my header, main content, callout, and my footer. Now if I go to my main CSS, if I go to the top, and it's important to read this and kind of see how this, but basically there's the mobile layout, and so this is waiting for CSS to be added for that. And then there's the tablet layout, and then the same thing down here for the desktop. Okay, so I'm going to do a save all. Then notice down here you can also change views here. So I often will start with the desktop view and I'll work from there and then go back and adjust things. So now I'm going to focus on my layout. And so I can resize my div this way. And then I can take this one and I could resize it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 columns here, 1, 2, 3, 4 columns here, so that should fit. Let's click move up a row. Okay. And everything else seems to look pretty much the way I want it. So I'm going to start by clicking on body tag. Keep in mind, I'm going to make sure the CSS designer's here. With Dreamweaver Creative Cloud, things have changed a bit. And so you have the CSS designer. If you're comfortable with older versions, you can sometimes down here in the properties inspector click edit rule. And so what you'll see is it's wanting to change the rule for the body and the boilerplate CSS. So that's not really what I want to do there. And so you got to be careful about when and how you use this. But be aware that you do have these options. But what I'm going to do is click body. And over here, I'm going to click on main CSS. I'm going to click the plus sign. You see body comes up. I'm going to hit return or enter. And then down here, I'm going to go to background. I'm going to give a background color to my page. I'm going to save all. Then I'm going to click on header. I'm going to make sure I'm back on my split view. I'm going to click on header and I can see it down here. And you can start going through the same process. But with header selected, you can see I have header. And it says header and main, so that's the one I want to be adjusting. And so I'm going to change the background of my header to white. And while I'm here, I'm going to change my font. And make sure my font size, because I want this nice and big. So I'm going to use extra large. And you'll see that there's some different fonts in here. You can always go to manage fonts and find some other ones. And so these are basically web-based fonts that are going to be easier to use. So when you add one, they'll show up here, and so you can see one that I've added. And I'm going to change the color. Going to font size normal. My weight is set because it's based on how this font is. I'm going to go down here to border. I'm going to unselect this, and I'm going to do a bottom border, solid. And actually, I'm going to change this to 1 pixel. Okay. hit apply, and I can see it up there, and I'm going to hit OK. So now I'm going to go to my main, make sure it's selected. And you'll notice that the property inspector just changes. So if I go back and forth, right, it doesn't here, but if I click back up here again, I can see main content, hit edit rule, background, I want it white, my font, you can see different ones, and so down here this is Helvetica essentially. It's going to start with Gotham, but that works fine for me. I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave the color, everything here for now. I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to click on my callout. Make sure it's callout in main. It is. Background is white. Okay. And then I'm going to make sure that font is set to the same. And I'm doing this individually because I might decide for the callout I want a different font. You could also just add this at the body level and say for the whole page I want to use Gotham, etc. So I'm going to hit OK. And then down at the footer, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do my background color as white. I'm going to choose my type, and so in this case I'm fine with using Gotham, but I want to actually make my font smaller, extra small in this case. Okay, let's see if there's anything else I want to do right now. There isn't. I'm going to actually change my background. Alright, set it white. I'm going to hit apply. Okay. And actually hit center. And then I'm going to actually change color. So I'm going to basically try to hit this background color, and then I'm going to come up and slide up just to do something lighter. I'm going to save all. I'm going to preview this in Safari. So everything looks kind of good. You can see that, right? So when it gets to the tablet size or the smartphone size, nothing's there. So that's fine. So far, everything looks good. There's a little bit of funkiness going on here, and there's something going on here. And so basically, what I can do is I can go to this grid layout, or grid container, which is essentially my container. And if I'm finding a hard time here getting my rule, and I can look down here, there it is. Hit edit. Make sure it's in main. It is. That all looks good. I can actually just add a background color here of white as well. And you'll see that it fixed that little area in between. Alright. So now, I did notice that I never put a title. Now you want to have something meaningful that makes sense. Save all. And if I want to, adding some space sometimes will help at least visualize the page. Okay, so you can see that the way this is. And actually the background white color is not showing up, so we can, just refreshing. So you can see that I have my header, it's a nice bigger font. I have a little border there. I have my main content, I have a call out, and then I have my footer. And that's a good basic layout. Now then, based on the device, it's going to change. So what I can do is, and if I select here, I can start seeing these differences as well. And so I can always make these changes from this view. So now that I'm in tablet, I can click on the grid container, or if I select over here, if I go to, let's hit cancel for a minute. If I go down here and I find my grid container, hit edit rule, background, white, you can see that I've basically added that for this layout as well. And if I go look at my CSS, you can see that it's started to do that for the tablet. So there's the tablet, I can see now that it added the background. So that's why it's important to notice where you are down here, whether you're at the desktop view, the tablet, or etc. But once you're really comfortable with this, you can just start copying, pasting something. So if I know I want this in the grid container for each, this is where I can start just finding each one. So this is the mobile layout, grid container, add the background color. And especially when I know if I'm going to have it for each, right? So I'm going to add it for my main call out, or my main content for my call out, and then my footer. Do the same thing for the next one. And so I'm just copying and pasting because now I know what I'm doing. You wouldn't have to do it this way. You could go through the process for each one. And honestly, sometimes rather than just copying and pasting, it's good for you to go through and repeat those steps because it helps you sometimes change your design decisions. You know, maybe at this point, for instance, with the mobile layout, you decide you want to actually make this font a smaller font so it stands out more, and maybe it's indented. There's lots of ways that you can kind of play with this. But let's save all and preview in Safari. Alright, so there's something going on down here that needs to be troubleshooted, but you can see that as a desktop layout, as a tablet layout, and then over. So I'm going to try to see what's going on here that'd be causing that problem, but for the most part, the layout looks good. It's more the font that I'd want to change from page to page. And so let's start with, so it looks like, I don't even know when I did this, there was that HTML error. So now, let's preview that again. And that looks good. Just going to add a little text in here. I'm going to change this to an H1 tag, and then I'm going to add some styles, but basically I want to just get my layout going. And especially when, the biggest thing to think about when you're working on a mobile or fluid grid layout is that you don't want to have big images. Images aren't going to scale well, and you want to think about really simplicity. You don't want too many columns, too many different things. Often, when I do it, I with the desktop layout, I'll often work with a 2-column layout, and with the tablet and the smartphone layout, mobile device, I will do a 1-column. So this resources, I'm going to change the paragraph tag to an H3. And so from my tags, or my headings, I have an H1, an H2, body text, H3. This looks good. Let's preview it. So there's definitely some alignment issues here where, I'd want to play with some, but for the most part, this is looking really good. I'm going to do a couple more things here. I'm going to go to make sure my header is selected. Let's try that once more. Hit edit rule. I can see header. And so this is where I'm going to go to box. I'm going to add a top padding of 20. Let's make that even bigger. I'm going to click on my H1 tag. Now you notice that it's switched to inline. So you want to be careful of that, and that's something that I don't really want to happen there. So I'm going to click back on this, and rather than inline, I'm going to, because I want to be careful about that, because then it starts putting it in there, and that's not really what I want here. I'm going to, you can see now it's basically changed this to, and I could leave this as is. I'm just going to, I know it's the only one I'm going to have here, so I'm going to just get rid of some of that text. I'm going to go down here. I want 0. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my paragraph. I'm going to make sure main is selected, hit the plus sign. And the reason I'm getting rid of this because I want the same thing to apply if in my footer or in my callout for a paragraph. So you see that by getting rid of that padding and margin with my heading and doing the top margin there, it just improves that proximity. And so that's just something that you'd want to do for both of these. So I would follow the same process with my H2 tags. I'm not going to do it right now in the interest of time. And then because I'm trying to make a similar kind of look and feel throughout, I'm going to actually go to my main view, and I'm going to start down here. There's definitely something looks like that is, I think that extra one's supposed to be down here. Let's double check that I didn't miss anything up here. So you have to get comfortable reading this and seeing that the way it does this. It basically puts everything, for instance, for your desktop in a curly brace, and so you always need that extra one at the end. You can see that it's a red rather than a pink. But this is where if I go down and I know that this is my header information that for my main, I can go to, I just copied that. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to change it here. Now, you know, it might be that I don't want that kind of, you know, maybe I want 20 pixels of padding at the top. You can also, instead of pixels, you can, you know, make it adjust more, but right now I'm just trying to give you really the big picture. You know, the hope is that you're definitely not kind of trying to follow around and doing this exactly step by step with me, but rather just learning the process. So now you can see tablet, and then you can see here. So that looks good. You know, once again, I could work from this view. I could just go to, you know, edit or work in my CSS designer. But for me, often it's when I already know what I have done here in desktop, I will often just start making some changes along the way. So you'll notice that with the H1, what I didn't do is I didn't dictate the height, or the size that is. And so what I'm going to do is right here, I'm going to copy this. I'm making sure that that curly brace is still there. And then for here, I'm going to do font size. There's a couple ways that I could do this. I could do it by, you know, maybe I want it 1 point. Let's do this actually. Let's see what that looks like if we do it that way. Let's leave that. Let's copy this once more for the top. Save all. Preview. So you can see that I think for the most part this works. It arguably could be a little smaller when I go to the tablet view. You can also see that the headings, alright, so my sizes aren't quite there. So I could adjust that. Another approach always is, I could make the decision, and this is where you have ultimate control. So for the desktop, I could decide font size. I want my H1 to be 28 pixels. I'm going to make an H2 because I never added that. I want that to be 20 pixels. And then, so that's my desktop. So then I can go down and say that for my tablet, I want it to be 24, 18, and then for my smartphone. And the key thing is you can look at this all you want on a desktop, but you really have to check this out, upload it to your web space, and look at it on a mobile device so you can see, does it look the way you think it should. Let's preview it. So you can see what I set that font for the H1 and H2. You can see it carried over, and it carried over. And it looks like there's a few other things that aren't looking right, but for the most part, hopefully you are getting a good idea of this is really just a process of going through and making changes so it looks good in all three of these layouts. And then once you feel comfortable with creating a website with the fluid grid layout, really you have to ask yourself moving forward, does it not always make sense to create websites this way? And so you'll know your learners, you'll know your environment better, and whether it makes sense to spend the time. But once you get comfortable with this, you realize it doesn't take that much more time to create websites that can be used on any device. Hope you have fun with this experiment. It's totally normal to struggle at first because things aren't going to always work where you think they should, and it definitely takes more time. But this makes a better experience more often for all users. So have fun and create some great stuff. Thanks.